Hello everyone. Today's talk is titled Art of Treasure Revealing. And I'm going to talk about this idea through many angles that are all part of the same sphere. In the sense that the concept of treasure revealing is not something in which you have the pirate mentality and you're trying to take something out of the reality that is in front of you. Treasure revealers was a concept that when I was first introduced to, it's as if time and space stopped and I just knew something about something. And in a sense, what I'm trying to communicate is that I go to this library, I think it's a chapters, and actually I go to chapters, yeah. I go to chapters and I go to this Buddhist section. And as I'm in this Buddhist section, I just randomly, spontaneously just follow my intuition and I choose a book. This book, I choose many, but this one, out of the ones that I bought, was called A Clear Mirror. And I open and I read the first beginning chapters of it. And so the beginning chapters, it's as if these pages are communicating about a being who was a treasure revealer, not in the sense of a physical treasure, but in the sense that there was some knowing, greater wisdom he could extract out of its reality to then share among men. So for me, my idols automatically all went away and I realized the greatest being is one who can be a vast moment of novelty in bringing something new. So the value of the new is more eternal than that which has been kept to then be seen new, to be seen anew. So the concept of treasure revealing became as if there was this story, for example, and I want you to just simply see this in the minds of human beings, where there was this great Tibetan master, I believe Guru Padmasambhava, where he suddenly gets and obtains this knowledge. And this also shows the level in treasure revealing as well, where he brings down this knowledge, and it's called the Book of the Dead. But he sees that the people of Tibet at that time are not ready. So he hides it, but presents the prophecy that there will come a time when the people are ready, in which one man will find this hidden teaching. And so if we were in the mind, and eventually it does, another being comes and another emanation finds what that same emanation left behind. So if we were in the eyes of that person who eventually finds this prophecy after a couple of years, after many years, we see it's as if this person knows that there's something here for them to find. They have this existential longing of a self-discovery. However, in that existential longing of a self-discovery, they are also seeing that it is of a multidimensional journey. It's of a multidimensional search in the sense that as you are also journeying and going climbing these mountains, your experience of self and time and space are fluctuating as well. So this man who suddenly has this intuition, he's like, I need to find something, I don't know, there's just something I need to find. Perhaps one day is walking by and beyond his linear rationality, an aspect of his knowing says, move these rocks, and he does and he finds me. So treasure revealing is the trust in life you have and in existence you have for it to reveal the new in the most compassionate way. And it's compassionate because you are all embraceable. It's as if you have acknowledged all reality to a degree where you're like, now, let me see. And so you reveal to yourself. It is all a self-communication in which the reception can be utilized for man. So if you think that you're communicating to another sense of other, your reality still has turbulence. But if you as the point of consciousness recognize that all reality is self-communication, in that knowing, in that existential sense of being, one is found to be all that is. So the art of treasure revealing, for now, in how Mr.Within is, in a sense, presenting this concept, is that you need to observe your life and see what is this treasure. I mean, look at your life, look at how you're living, look at how you are as a person in your moment, and just be like, what else is there that is beyond what I can expect right now? And so once you go into that aspect of exploring and observing yourself through a very deep and calm and gentle self-contemplative manner, perhaps in the stillness and silence presented through many Zen monasteries and also, in a sense, many meditation and yogic techniques. It's very important to see that if there is something here, we can utilize it. So, for example, I don't need very deep philosophies to understand something. But there was a time I did, and so I used the imagery to understand that life is more than the image. So it doesn't matter really what you use, but ancient Indian texts and many ancient books had it down to a point where there was a platform that you could capably go and be actually God. You know? In other words, you had a multidimensional sense of openness in how your experience was simultaneously all that your spectrum could be, and the observance of it, which can eloquently be said as nothing. So once you have this sense of being a treasure revealer of life, you immediately, in an instant, it's as if a refresh button on the browser, and it's like for a second you automatically have instant compassion for all life form. It's as if you have just recognized the life that you are and the life that is within your environment, and so you're like, no, I don't need to change my environment. I need to be in this proximity of self-awareness where I'm observing its beautiful dimensions, and so I am going with an accurate view. And an accurate view is one that it does not think it's like inaccurate. Because being in that realm is its own complex problem, in which the answer needs to be a simple observance. Many problems are like rooms you've entered in where you suddenly realize, why am I in this room? And you just get out and you're like, wow, you know, the park was right here. I randomly just went in a room when I was looking for a park, you know. So it's very important to know thyself and know your moment and the being that you are before any human ideology. And be comfortable in your silence. It is your greatest tool. You will see that the being who has become comfortable with silence has become comfortable with all noise. And so you will not be bothered by any range of sound. In other words, sound will not have the same presence for you do not have the same presence of awareness. You are firm beyond ideology in the sense that you're not trying to touch ideology, you're not trying to like get rid of your ideas or have ideas. You're just present. It's a natural phenomena, which is your existence. Now, for many advanced communicators, it is very important to recognize that the children of tomorrow are being born with a different sense of physical potential. So we realize that each generation has their unique quality of the things they shared. So each generation is like a family of its own. However, we see that each generation has its own unique view of life to offer. And so it is not that one view of life should be the only view of life. It is that many views of life can be the only views of life if they choose to be. So what that means is that we are understanding, okay, there's a multidimensional sense where the object and the subject are aware of one another. But in the sense that the subject is keeping the object, your mind is keeping your body here. But once you become aware of what's keeping the mind, those dimensions speak beyond form. And so because they speak beyond form, you will see that if you are not able to receive it, there is no reception. So the way man receives, so in other words, if I was here and I wanted to, let's say, just communicate the best form of communication I can as an artist, let's say as a painter, I would not go in with the idea of a painting, but just simply a moment in my awareness, which it is so beautifully grand and it is so with me that the moment communicates on the page. I am simply just the surface of the book, showing what's inside. But I am not the content, in the sense that the content is present in a different dimension of experience. So the treasure revealer, through his self-discovery, is understanding that he's an advanced communicator, because that is how the simple communication is being kept. Because there is a collective intelligence in which an individual intelligence can even be individualized. And so these concepts must not just be accepted as symbols, as gods, or as theories. It must be experienced directly, because that is the potential of the human being. In other words, why are you constantly like reading about cake? Go eat the cake. Go try it. You know? And this cake is not the very unhealthy cakes that are found in stores. This cake is when your life is being recognized in its much deeper dimensions. So it's as if there's some people who they see death and they're like, oh gosh, I never want to have that experience, which is not very realistic. But there are some people who see it and they wonder. They're like, wow. So like the attention as a being I am right now, in a second, I'm so fragile that I can fade. So what is the experience of fading? What is the experience of many dimensions or aspects of reality in which I have conceived to be me? So it is self-exploration. Because guys, there are some people who become realized, but only in following someone. So they follow someone whose life went towards realization, and they do exactly as they do that until they realize themselves. Well, that's a problem, because if you're following a guru, a teacher, a master, you're still stuck in the imagery. So it's like, it'd be a while, like after you've lost the imagery, then you'd be able to explore yourself. Because that realization is of the untouchable. It is one where life does not care for the language, for your ideas, for your thoughts, because it's being all dissolved within a greater moment of experience. And so the treasure revealer is the being who's aware of the different experiences happening in multidimensionality, in which his awareness, his origin of being is the collective container. So that everything in reality is alive for man, for the spark of man is. Man is simply an emanation. He is an echo of a greater voice. But it does not mean that the voice is not there, or the voice is not spoken. It simply means that for man to have an experience beyond man, he must completely see what a man is. And that is the exploration of you and your life, in which you simply for a second go into a park, go into some silent, comfortable place, or just are walking home late at night peacefully and just contemplate your existence. And in doing so, you will see how much ideology is manifest when you don't need that much ideology. In other words, even though there is a sense of empty silence found once you find Mr. Within, you recognize that the keeper of reality has just shifted in intelligence and dimension. And so because the keeper of reality and the knower aspect of you has experienced itself through a greater observance, you are no longer the same as you never were. And the treasure revealer suddenly realizes that because he has let go of all life has been allowed to be communicated. So suddenly this human being goes from having a very dull life in seeing that he is not the elusive ideology in which his attention is constantly being on, and as his attention goes within, in the sense being aware of what that being is, in that sense of transcendent view, one is found to suddenly have their memory and their acknowledgement, awareness of their memory shift in the sense that you become all the experience of all the images that you are aware of in this moment. In other words, it's like you're not keeping it in the segmentation of past, present, future. Suddenly, every image in your awareness is present in a moment beyond the need for space and time. It's as if the person who was constantly creating the same thing, the same, let's say, a machine with the same tools, suddenly stops using the same tools and just looks. And so he sees the potential for many other aspects of how reality can manifest in one's experience. Because the wisdom of the experiencer is always beyond the objects of experience. So in other words, it's not that the book is beyond you or it's a holy book. It's just that when you read something about existence deeply through a very profound and formless self-reflective manner, you suddenly recognize that the truth seeker was never there. In that the absolute reality or the ultimate reality was present within the reality that thought it wasn't the ultimate. And so there comes a point where imagery dissolves. And so when imagery fades, it is not that you're not looking, it's just that the subjective interpretation on reality fades, in which it becomes object and consciousness. So you realize that for a second the mind has allowed itself to become transparent. And it's still there, the intelligence is there, but it's in its transparency, solid has understood that it can be gas. And gas has seen the beauty of its creation. Because it is in that manner where we acknowledge self as more than a self that is limited to a time and space continuum and to bodies that feel that this is what it is. Everyone is having an experience of a body. This is objective reality. This is how this dimension, how this plane of reality has been made. However, you can see that just as you have an aware that you're a physical being, that you're just this biological machine, let's say, there's also something keeping the machine working. And so when you look at what is keeping this biological machine working, you see that it is at first your awareness, your self-awareness, but then when you try to find where is the self-awareness coming from, it is not from just here. So that is when spiritual dimensions or spiritual visions and stuff become relevant to you, because your life has become relevant by becoming irrelevant to itself. And so breathing on a mountain alone is perhaps a greater wisdom of all that we think we know. So, I hope that you see that you are your greatest treasure revealer. You must explore yourself, and in doing so, you will become able in ways where your creativity expands, not because you have just found some muse or inspiration, just because your awareness to existence has shifted. And because of that shift, you will see the beauty in how emptiness is connecting everything that is full. So your fulfillment comes from the awareness and the knowing of the emptiness and the hollowness within everything in which you're projecting meaning to, or projecting such a reality outwards to then be convinced that that is the reality. Knowing thyself means that you dissolve into the knowing of all existence. You dissolve into the knowing of nature. And that means that you stop utilizing a system, a technology as a being of thought. Language, imagery, thought, words, these are a technology that man is using. So you will recognize there are better technologies when you are the total awareness of the silence. And so the silence is where all fears fear. In other words, they cannot pass that because they are still an individual conception. But the silence and stillness are qualities of collective awareness. So if you suddenly see someone who you want to help and they've gone out of control, in other words, the physical system, the guy's angry, the guy's mad, the guy's doing crazy things, it's that you must take them to a gentler reality where they can balance their machinery. So what that means is that, for example, if someone has been a criminal, by putting him in a box with the imagery of a box, you're dulling down that being's experience, so you're creating more agitation. It's like you're creating more of a dangerous person to then release if the person has a release, probation or whatever. So, it is very important to see that an agitated human system must immediately become aware of stillness and silence, which is, in a sense, the allowance for its for its movement to not be only in that way. You struggle and you're agitated and you're not being authentic and honest with life when you are trying to do something. You're like, gosh, I gotta be this, I gotta be that. This does not mean that do not communicate yourself as a person in social, in social settings. This just means that have an awareness to yourself as life. And so walk calmly and gently, and perhaps with the grace of many Zen masters, mystics, yogis, and just people who in their kindness saw the beauty of life. Because treasure revealing is perhaps the most important thing and most useful thing a human being can do, to share greater views of creation with man. So that means that the treasure revealer is that being who, through his knowing and awareness of his internal dimensions, has received and has reached points of perception that human mind has not thought of before, in a sense. So in other words, society has never seen. So if you are be an artist, you don't want to go copy someone. You want to be a contribution by bringing out the chaos and madness that is playfully creating imagery in your mind on the canvas, which is what you're going to be giving in this life as your life's work. So it is in self-observance where the greatest treasures are revealed, and some of these treasures are simply the shifting of your being. Sometimes you increasing your state of being as an individual into a more collective knowing is much more helpful than you going and feeding a 1,000 children without really realizing the true nature of reality. It is very important that you recognize the true nature of reality is right now. in that you do not need a curriculum. It is right now. Because what if the nature of that sense of realization, that sense of enlightenment in quotations, that sense of collective knowing is beyond the linear settings of space and time. So it's as if you are keeping yourself in one aspect of your experience limited to actually the totality and that, in a sense, how your real experience is. Insanity is the cure for a sane society that is blind. Because sanity was always more boring than insanity. So an insane person might not be able to communicate properly, but if you see them, they're just, it's like their life energies as a being is just, it's more insane. So you see, you need to be aware of natural movement and sometimes don't interpret yourself. Because if you suddenly recorded yourself and really lowered your voice, or in a sense, slowed down the video and heard yourself, you'd be like, I'm not making sense. I'm talking like, you know, a very, very slow motion character. Yeah? So it's that range of sensitivity. So people need to understand that it is not that you need an external cure. It is that all cures are found when you see where externality originates from. So if you were to go ask, what is this sense of outside? You would then wonder, what is a sense of inside? And in that deep sense of self-contemplation, become the observance that is a clarity that is untouched. I would like to also right now give some templates and in a sense, certain images of what can be the external productions of a treasure revealer. You will suddenly find yourself having an intense focus in terminology and language and imagery. You will become the eagle's gaze both on the branch and also both in the sky. And you will have an awareness to form that will make you be able to communicate things as part of your natural emanation. So you suddenly see you as a being are the greater communication, so you're always communicating. And as you become aware of that, some of its manifestation can be poetry. Can be suddenly you begin using language differently and you just burst out writing chaotic lines in which you're not just running over grammar in a sense, but you're in a sense being that insane man in that academic hall. Where certain rules had to be certain rules. It will manifest as crazy artwork, but the artist will realize that the art is not just when he holds the brush. His moment of being is art, is the artwork. And so his experience becomes one where it is not limited by form, but has such an awareness to form that is experiencing many simultaneous conceptions of it too. And that is the beginning of how the lotus of multidimensionality opens up. Recognize that many people are born in senses of identity and personality. But as you choose to be a personality, for example, you say, as I'm only this person, this is me. If you became more observant, you will see that what is you is many processes of change in which you are choosing a certain aspect of a spectrum of your own creation, which is presented to you based on your external projection of everything being a co-creation. And what that really means is that when you lie to yourself, you see how you have just created another version of yourself. Or when you lie to someone else, it's as if like you have just given them another view that is not as authentic as you. And so you have, in a sense, cloned yourself in a way where you're not really you, and so you have presented them in the projection of their mind. But what that all suggests is that your complexity dissolves into simplicity, and simplicity is an observance of existence. It's an observance of your moment, and it is why many teachers have said, be here and now. Because when you are here and now, there's an aspect of your self-awareness that is beyond the ideology in which you're so convinced to be life. the ideology and the imagery of your convictions. Your aspiration becomes one of greater understanding, and that means that the cup needs to be emptied for a new sense of fulfillment. You must have the ability to acknowledge life and to see that just as you have held, for example, a pen and written something, you are never the pen and you're never the words, but you are the originator of the experiences that are meaningful to many. You need to recognize that many people right now will realize that they have an awareness of their internal dimension. So in a lot of my talks, many people might hear and they're like, I am aware of my internal dimensions. But you need to see that you must not have a need of trying to communicate all of your internal dimensions externally. And what that really means is that if you choose to communicate everything that you're receiving internally, you are creating yourself to be a character in a game in which you have something to give to people, and so you will always be caught in a sense of dualistic relationship. However, if you are the simple sense of just a calm presence, a gentle presence, perhaps as gentle as how a tree is here, you will receive a transformation of spectrum that will open worlds for you. And these worlds will be simply in how much you as a being already have the ability to confront life and to acknowledge life in more than just its immediate dimension. You will see that you will be absorbed in your writing in the sense that everything will tell you, look within. And so you will suddenly find the page and you will see that within you there's nothing. And so you're looking at this empty page with a pen in your hand, and there is no idea, there is nothing. But you begin writing, and for the first time it's as if you are sat in an empty room and are observing what your hands are writing. And so you will realize that what's being written is all it's a communication of how your awareness to the moment is allowing itself through many subjective platforms to experience itself as consciousness as God. So it's as if all the branches of the tree were, in a sense, into the soil of the air. So if the air was a soil that was connected to the soil of the earth, for example, you would see that they were never branches but roots of a different kind. And as you know yourself, you will emanate your communication. The pilot of consciousness walks, and people will know that he is in his plane. That he knows where he's going because he is the awareness of his conception in a totality beyond conception. And in it, you will see that you also have a responsibility to co-create with abstract elements. So what that means is that when your internal dimensions, when you become aware of your internal dimensions, externality gets depth. Externality suddenly turns into, for example, a spectrum of infinity. So that you can talk about everything in the sense that you can see how everything dissolves into nothing. Now, it is important to see that an aspect of you in this reality doesn't need to change, but an aspect of you needs to also be the change. So, do not really judge externality, but observe it until you recognize what internal dimensions could even mean, what the concept of Mr.Within or what the concept of an aspect that is within you means. This is all for you, because I am not your eyes. I have not seen the world you have seen, you only have seen the world you have seen. And so there has been a poet named Rumi, and he said, be living poetry, as if this man wrote so much poetry in that he saw the greatest poetry was the act of living. So in other words, you begin living in a profound manner rather than trying to do profound things. You become so authentic that you're not doing anything for anyone else, but you are doing everything for that sense that is within you that is aware of all. So in other words, when I'm, for example, compassionately helping someone, I am not helping them. I am giving all that is to all that is within my moment. And so there is a clarity of your being that is very fresh. And, in a sense, allowed. It is a feeling that those permissions you never gave yourself, you've always had the ability to give it to them, to give it to yourself, and so you have. We must have such tough social armor in which that when we are walking in a society where many realities, many people are talking and saying things, and there's an information explosion, because information has become the new currency, you would see that a being who has the ability to just preserve his reality and walk in the sense that he is very clear of where his values are emanating from, he will be untouched. You will go in a room, and if the whole room is, in a sense, for a moment just become an angry mob that's about to, in a sense, deconstruct every reason why you did something, you would bask in that fire in the same way that Guru Padmasambhava did when he was young, and he was talking to this princess of this king, and the king didn't like it, so the king decides to burn this kid in front of the whole kingdom. And so when this kid goes in this in the spot where he sits, where there's a lot of fire, and wood, so in a sense they place him in this place where they're about to burn him. And so Guru Padmasambhava, this man, just simply goes and sits down and goes on his meditation, and he sees, and the king sees, and the whole kingdom sees, that no fire can take this being's knowing of where he is. It's as if this being had such certainty and such knowing of his existence that he was untouched by even the flames of temporal reality. And so as Guru Padmasambhava simply gently opened his eyes where there was all ash around him, the king threw his crown in the air, in the sense that he never was a king, and the crown fell on Guru Padmasambhava's head. And so the whole kingdom, in a sense, was given, I think, to Guru Padmasambhava. But the reason I'm saying the story, and it's significant, is because you too must stand in the fires of social pressure. You will see that society will try to communicate that you are a certain type of person, and it is up to you to choose how much of that person you are. And sometimes it's healthy to allow yourself to be certain roles. So what that means is that sometimes I realize it is important for me to go and simply just listen to people talk. So I would go and ask a question, and I would just listen. Because the awareness as a being is not that the communication needs to be limited to how the terminals need to behave. All terminals are omnipresent. And so there's compassion of a simultaneous nature. You become comfortable with your imagery because you observe it, and the observer is always beyond the limitations. For it has always been the limitless sky. I hope this talk has served you, and I hope that the treasure revealers of tomorrow realize that the core of who they are is the real treasure. And so self-discovery is your profound entrance into your own profound entrance. So you will in a sense see that you have not just been a man, and you have not just been a man lost in the world of a creation, but you are the creator of all creation, in the sense that the ability of your internal dimensions is one where your externality would never be there. So you would become aware that life is as if it is, and so you are dissolved into a moment of transparency. And that is when the true vision is presented. The treasure is revealed as you are revealed to yourself. Much blessings and namaste.